Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Candidate Development Subcommittee's Q&A session. Tonight, we will specifically be talking about what to expect now that TPE is virtual. And we'll be going over some logistics, tips, strategies, and best practices. So thanks again for joining us this evening. So to give you a little overview of some of the things again that we're talking about, so we'll do some welcome and introductions. We'll have some words from TPE as well as our partner associations. We'll talk about some of the specific logistics of TPE Virtual, and then we'll share some tips, strategies, and best practices that'll help you ace TPE Virtual. We'll talk about some of the offerings that we'll be providing next week during TPE Virtual, and then we'll open it up for any questions that folks may have, and then wrap things up with some closing remarks. So to do introductions, hello again, my name is Kirby R. Gibson. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am the Assistant Director of Residence Education at Michigan State University. And I also serve as the Candidate Development Subcommittee Chair. Rob, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Braswell. I am a member of the subcommittee on Candidate Development Subcommittee. In my day job, I'm the Senior Associate Dean of Students overseeing conduct in Title IX at the University of North Texas.
And then our other committee member is Bailey Adams. She is not on the call with us this evening. However, she is a great addition to our team and serves as a residence director at Oakland University. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to our TPE director, Dr. Kirsten Fox, who's going to give a little word from TPE and our partner associations.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us. As Kirby mentioned, I'm Kirsten Fox. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am the director of TPE. I want to start just by thanking you for being here tonight, but also knowing that this is probably a really overwhelming time, and I want to make sure to acknowledge that obviously with everything that is going on in the, in our global world right now, it's overwhelming and it's its own, yet you're also on the front lines of your current jobs, most of you, working more than your hours per week that you're supposed to be, working to try to help our students and our campuses. Many of you are also graduate students that have now had to adjust to online courses. Some of you aren't sure if you're having graduation ceremonies or not after working really hard for 2 years, and you're in the midst of a job search. So I just want to really start by acknowledging on behalf of TPE and all of our professional associations how just much we recognize how difficult this is. Disappointing is an understatement, right? It's disappointing that we can't hold TPE on site this year. All of the committee and Kirby and Robert and Bailey and their interns have worked so hard, so I'm disappointed for them that they can't be here. They're passionate about TPE, but most of all, we're disappointed that you don't have this experience. So we're going to work as hard as we can to make TPE Virtual a really great experience for you. And any bit of stress that we can help alleviate as you're going through all of this, that's our job. And so from myself as the director of TPE, and from all of our partner associations, in particular ACU Hawaii and NASPA as the main two presenting organizations, we just want to know that we're here for you. We want to support you, and we're going to talk throughout this webinar a little bit more about different ways that we're going to continue to engage with you next week during TPE Virtual as well as beyond. So just wanted to put that out there. I also wanted to introduce my other TPE colleague. So Jacob, if you could take a minute to introduce yourself.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Jacob Maccabee, and I use the he series pronouns. I am the new program coordinator for the placement exchange. This is my 4th day on the job. So I'm hitting the ground running, and I'm very excited to see how TPE is going to be moving virtually for next week. And I hope you all are excited, and best of luck in this process.
And Jacob is doing great.
He is doing fantastic. You know, we are very fortunate to have such great colleagues and, as I mentioned before, committee members. So I just want to thank Kirby and Robert and Bailey and our interns and Jacob for all that they have done and will continue to do for TPE. Great. I just wanted to take a moment before I turn it back over to the candidate development team to talk a little bit about what TPE Virtual is. For many of you, this going to the on-site event may have been your first time really experiencing TPE. And we launched registration back on October 1st. Some of you signed up back on October 1st. And until, you know, just over a week ago, we were still planning on being on site. So we've had to pivot pretty quickly. So one, thank you for your patience as we have also tried to navigate what TPE Virtual looks like, but we are excited to be able to house a TPE Virtual experience for you. First and foremost, I know we've had a lot of questions about refunds from candidates who had signed up before we went virtual. All of your registration is going to be refunded 100%. So everything that you paid to register for TPE for the registration will be refunded to you. You do not need to let us know. You do not need to fill out any forms. Use your time to focus on your job search and everything else you have to do. We will take care of the refund process. You will be refunded on the method of payment that was paid for your registration. It should take, you know, ideally it'll happen within 30 days. We're asking for people for the grace for a little bit longer. Our accounting office has all had to move out of their physical office space and working from home. So they are also trying to figure out how to best be able to process refunds from their individual houses or apartments. So thank you for that just kind of grace period. We are hoping it will be a lot sooner than that. We just want to be realistic should there be a delay, but our goal is it will be sooner than that. We know you've invested a lot in TPE beyond the registration as well. So we wanted to be able to refund that registration. So that is one piece that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned to you. Otherwise, TPE Virtual logistics, you will still engage in TPE during the March 25th through March 28th time period. We will continue to have a TPE welcome instead of me being able to welcome you and having our committee chairs and our NASPA and Hawaii leadership welcome you from, you know, in person. We'll be welcoming you from a screen similar to this, but we're still really looking forward to the ability to be able to do that for you. We will still have the TPE Academy will take place that I know Kirby and her team will talk about. And then we're going to have interviews, and we're going to have a lot of interviews, and they're going to be great interviews. And we have a lot of really enthusiastic employers who are really looking forward to meet with you. We were on a call with them earlier today, and they showed up in droves to make sure that they knew what they needed to do to make sure that they were also supporting all of you in the process. So we will continue to utilize our contact system through the portal. So when you are in your TPE candidate dashboard, you can search for jobs and positions and contact the employers. I would suggest not waiting for all employers to contact you. Many are, but know they are also dealing with a lot right now. So if there is a job that you see that you're interested in, it does no harm in contacting them to say, hey, I'm a candidate, I'm still interviewing, I would love the opportunity to connect with you. So put that out there. You don't need to wait for them to schedule that interview. They are still the only ones who can actually schedule an interview on your schedule, but definitely reach out to them. If there are times now, since you won't be on site, you may be doing something with your work or for grad school or with family or with life. If you know there's times that you still are unable to interview, make sure you block those. And I think Kirby's going to go into that more, so I'm going to kind of keep moving. But all of that will still happen just in a virtual space. So know that you'll still have lots of opportunities to interview. We have heard from a lot of employers that they may start interviews early, and many are going to go long beyond March 28th as they have had to push pause on some of their systems. So you may be also hearing from employers that are saying, hey, we want to interview you. We might do some during TPE, but we might do some come April. So know that that process will not end on March 25th or on March 28th. And we're also looking into how we can potentially advance our technology in the meantime to allow that to continue to happen during and after, during the recruitment process, but after the official end date of TPE Virtual. So continue to schedule interviews by contacting employers to express your interest. They know that you're out there. We want to make sure that that is continuing to happen for you. We will continue to post resources on your dashboard, so just keep checking it out. Like I said, it's also going to happen. It'll just be virtual. So with that, I'll continue to help answer questions at the end, but I'm going to really turn it over now to the candidate development team.
Thank you, Kirsten, for one, your kind words, and two, really just demonstrating the passion and commitment to the TPE experience and to our candidates and employers. And so we couldn't do this work without you and Jacob, as well as our committee. So thank you all so much. All right, so next we're gonna take this time to pretty much talk about some tips, strategies, and best practices that will help you ace TPE Virtual. And so some things for you to consider. First and foremost, as Kirsten was talking about earlier, is creating and maintaining a schedule. And so in your TPE dashboard, you have the opportunity to add various components or time blocks to your schedule. As Kirsten said it before, employers would be the ones that would add interview times to your schedule. And so those are going to be the times that show up in blue. Anything else that you add to your schedule will be these gray like blocks here. And so it is highly encouraged that you create and maintain a schedule to keep track of your interviews so that you are aware of where you need to be. And in terms of where you need to be, of course, that'll happen virtually, but knowing when interviews are happening. Also want to emphasize that we are still operating out of Central Standard Time for interviews. And so as you see your schedule through the dashboard, those are times in Central Standard Time. And so for those of you all that are on the East Coast, that may mean that that's an hour later. For those of you all that are on the West Coast, that could be 2 hours early. And so just being cognizant of different time zones that you are in as you navigate that. I will also say too, employers will be communicating with you as well in terms of when those interviews are happening. And so they may adjust accordingly as well to be accommodating of those time zones. We also encourage you to schedule breaks for meals. So it's important for you to eat. So although you will not be on site, we still want you to continue your day as to give yourself some nourishment. And so thinking about that, and then just thinking about ways that you can not schedule interviews back to back. I will continue to stay on stand on this platform for days to encourage candidates to not have back-to-back interviews. You want to be able to have some time to breathe, to take a deep breath, reflect on kind of how that interview went. And then also you want to give yourself time to prepare for what other interviews that you may have. And so if you are a candidate that has back-to-back interviews, I will know, and I will definitely reach out and encourage you to make some adjustments there. You also want to be able to give yourself time, particularly you and employers time, to be ready for those interviews. And so if you have those back-to-back interviews, and you won't give yourself the opportunity to communicate and according with the employers. But if you so happen to have them, if that's unavoidable, we encourage you to reach out to employers, letting them know that you will be coming from another commitment. So you also may want to think about how you want to end and how you want to begin and end your day. And so if you look at this sample schedule here, there are blocks in the schedule that says morning prep. And so if you know that you take an hour and a half to get ready in the morning, and you know that you don't want to start your interviews until around, let's say 9 a.m. or so, block off that time on your schedule so employers, one, know not to schedule, they won't be able to schedule interviews during that time. And then two, you know, that's just a mental break for you to know that you have some time. And then you also want to think about blocking off time in terms of when you want your day to end. If you don't want to have interviews before or after 7 o'clock, then you can put a block of time on your schedule saying that no interviews are going to be conducted that day. So some other things to consider too as you are creating and maintaining a schedule. And then Rob's going to talk to you about phone and video interview strategies.
Yes. As we know, we're transitioning from that where we want to make sure that we are best preparing you all for the virtual experience. Make sure we're preparing you all for the virtual experience. And so we want to kind of have some of those tips as you're doing your phone interviews or video interviews for the first time. And so one of those that we want to talk about is just make sure that you're dressed appropriately. We know that you're not meeting the person in person, but you still want to be dressed for that interview. And so what that would be is pretty much any business professional that you would typically wear, like all of the outfits you've already planned for months, you can still wear those in your interviews. The employers may not be as stylish as you on that day. However, you will make a very great first impression on those employers, and you can continue to operate or dress that way. Some people have their sayings of dress appropriate from waist up and just wear whatever on the bottom. And some people feel it's appropriate to be fully dressed, to be fully in the moment. So you can really determine what's best for you. But just know that top up will be perfect. Or that's my saying. For you, you may need to be fully dressed, but you know what works for you. But just make sure that you're dressed appropriately for your interviews. You also want to find a quiet place with no distracting sounds. And so that may be your apartment, a quiet room, your office, whatever you feel is a quiet space for you, where you know you won't have distracting noises. So like a dog barking in the background, or your cat meowing beside you, or coming across your lap while you're trying to interview and things like that. Just be aware of your surroundings. As we were preparing for this, I watched a couple videos, and one of the tips that someone pointed out was, if you're in an apartment with roommates, or if you live in a house with people, let them know what you're doing, so you're not interviewing and someone's coming to bang on your door to ask to borrow your brush in the middle of the interview. So just things like that are things that you can really consider, and also consider using headphones. It'll be easier for you to hear their employers, but it's also easier for them to hear you as well. It'll be easier for them to hear you as well, as the microphone will be closer for direct communication. So think about that. And while you're looking for your spaces, you want to find a space with a good background. You see, I'm sitting on my couch. This is not the place for me to conduct my interviews. This plain white wall and this droopy couch in the back. You want to make sure that you're getting something very nice with a nice appealing background. So all the backgrounds you're seeing, Kirsten's background, Kirby's background, they have things there that's like really nice, professional office setting, or even in your home, you have like nice settings with like your lamps or plants and things like that, or your nice posters on the walls, things like that with a nice background. You can use that to also kind of show your personality to those employers while you're interviewing. So just a nice background in the back. Set your cameras at eye level and like an arm's distance away from you, so that you can really engage in that conversation with employers, looking into your camera. So it's more so like you're talking to them personally, versus kind of looking around or looking down on people or looking up at the camera, things like that. So it makes it a lot easier for you to fully engage in that conversation while you're meeting with the employers. And make sure you have good lighting. Sometimes it could be too much light, or the natural light from outside. Really kind of play around with it. And with this, you can really play around a couple days before the actual virtual day to figure out where's your perfect setting, your perfect backgrounds, perfect lighting. So is it the lighting from your ceiling fans or lightings from lamps in the house, or you just want to use your natural light from outside? So really kind of figure that out and play around with it prior to that day, so that you know what you're looking for and what you really want your settings to look like on that particular day, and you're prepared, and you don't have to worry about it 10 minutes before. You're like, oh my God, where am I going to sit? So you really have that stuff prepared and you're ready. And lastly, this is something that we think is a great attribute to the virtual experience. Now that you're in front of a computer and not sitting at the table with someone, you really can have your cheat sheets on the computer in front of you, on the tables around you, to really kind of have some of your research out while you're having that conversation with people. So you can really use this as your opportunity to kind of have your notes out, still review those, or even use them as your talking points while you're meeting with the employers or interviewing with the employers and things like that. So you can have those notes out, especially when you're doing your research on institutions and you want to really impress people. Have your nice notes out, and you can utilize that in your interview or during your interview.
One thing that I would also add too, so I want to acknowledge that not all interviews will be conducted through some sort of video conferencing platform. And so some of you all may be doing phone interviews. And so things to consider definitely, again, is the quiet place and being cognizant of distracting sounds. Although folks won't necessarily be able to see you over the phone, being able to dress for what your day is may give you that that feeling of being in the moment, right? And so if you want to be suited and booted for your interview or for phone interviews to just kind of get you in that headspace, feel free to do so. And then we also encourage you to be cognizant of cell service or phone service. And so if you know that a space that you are occupying does not have the best service, you want to make sure that you are in a space where that would happen accordingly. So.
Yeah, thanks, Kirby.
That's also you, Rob.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my life together over here. So we want to make sure that while you're doing your virtual experience, or while you're on the phone and doing your combination of experiences, we want to make sure that you're also still taking care of yourself, but also building community. One of the things we wanted to really hone on is make sure that you're scheduling breaks. Kirsten and Kirby have both hit on make sure you're scheduling breaks in your schedule. We really want to make sure that you are not just back to back, because that can be very draining and mentally draining for you, mentally and physically draining for you. So make sure you're taking those breaks, time to nurture your body, and eat, stay hydrated, things like that. Because we want you to be able to be your best in your interviews and not really wear yourself out, take care of yourself during that time. But it's really important that you're eating, you stay hydrated, and of course, during this pandemic, wash your hands. And we think that's really important that you do that while you're doing this virtual experience. We think that's really important to do so. Be able to speak with more self-compassion while you're conducting your interviews as well. And then also get a hype song. We know that as people are preparing for interviews, we all prepare differently. But as you're getting ready, there has to be one song that you listen to every single day that makes you focus, makes you excited, and make you feel like you can conquer the world. And so that's something that we want to really push there, that you really can just find that zone, that thing to use to zone in prior to you conducting or entering your interviews. And so just find that hype song to really recenter you and help you refocus prior to starting your interviews. Check in with a friend, partner, peers or mentors. We know that throughout the time that you are interviewing, you may have some classmates or cohort members who are also interviewing. So kind of check in, see how they're doing, have conversations around your experiences, their experiences, and know that you're not alone going through this process. There's several hundreds of graduates and professionals who are also going through this TPE virtual experience. So make sure that you're able to communicate with them and kind of talk about what the experience looks like. You can even talk about your interviews, where you're at and things like that. So we really just want you to have that time so you're not processing to yourself. And then also engage in reflection. You know, you can reflect on your interviews. For me, I typically take notes during my interviews. And at the end of those interviews, I reflect on how I felt how I went. And I also use that time to reflect for writing my thank yous. And so I use that time to review my notes of what we talked about. And then when I send my thank you notes, I reflect and talk about, Kirsten, I really enjoyed talking to you today about your multicultural initiatives that you have in housing on your campus. I think that's the right place for me, and I look forward to talking to you later. Those are everything that we talked about in my interview, and I had time to reflect on it, realize it was a good fit for me, and so I used that to utilize my thank you notes and things like that. And so just make sure that you're taking this time. We really want you to understand the importance of taking time for yourself during this time. You have anything you want to add, Kirby?
I would also, reflection is this piece too of you are considering the decision that will impact where you decide to go next. Whether this be a first job for you post grad school, or this is a next level or next step that you're considering if you are currently employed. And so really wanting you to reflect on so how did that interview go? After having some time to speak with an employer, do you feel as though your personal and professional values align? Is that someplace that you potentially could see yourself, especially the times that we are in, the opportunity to potentially even go on campus is very slim at this point, given travel bans and restrictions and things like that. And so really taking that time to think about what this means for you, so you can get to a space where you are happy with what you are deciding to go with. So, or if you feel as though you are with a interview with an employer, nope, my gut says no, taking the time to unpack that as well. And then encourage folks to follow Crystal Naomi .body and mind. That's on Instagram. It's an Instagram account that does a lot of self-care, self-awareness, and just wellness advice. And she has a lot of different tools and resources for folks to check out. And so encourage you all to visit her material. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take this time to talk about, so when TPE Virtual happens next week, what can the candidate development team do for you? And so the first thing that I wanted to highlight is that we will be offering concierge hours for US candidates. So on Thursday and Friday of next week, we will have someone from the committee. So whether it's us as a candidate development subcommittee, Kirsten, Jacob, or even some of our other members of our committee and interns will be available to answer questions, chat with you, help you reflect on things, etc. And so we'll be offering concierge hours from 9 to 11, 1 to 3, and then 5 to 7. Please note that these are all in Central Standard Time. And so again, you'll have to do the conversion of time zones and whatnot, depending on where you are in the world. And then on Saturday, the hours are only from 9 to 11 and then 1 to 3, given that the interview day wraps up around 5 or so that day. And then I also want to highlight one of the new features that we're excited about having on our website next week. It's called Crisp. Kirsten, would you like to actually talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. So we are going to, as we mentioned earlier, try to continue to figure out ways to both best engage you as well as answer your questions. A couple of things we are going to do. One is basically put a chat box on our website. So if you think about other websites where you go to and a customer service representative kind of appears, sort of a faceless, nameless person, well, usually they say their name. So we'll have that so that you can ask those quick questions. We are, as Kirby mentioned, right, there's going to be other opportunities to have connections like this. where you can call in or video in and kind of join in to be able to ask a question to somebody who's there. But this will be on the website, so it's just an opportunity to ask a quick question. That way you can get an immediate response as opposed to sending an email or a phone call, especially knowing that it's during Central Time hours from, officially 8:30 in the morning until 8 p.m. at night. We definitely want to make sure that we are available to answer your questions. So we'll have a host of staff and volunteers that will help that as well. Something else I really quickly want to point out, sorry, Kirby, to go a little bit off script. I mentioned earlier how we had a conversation with employers, and we've talked about the scheduling already. One of the things that we told employers is that they need to make sure that they have not only video conferencing opportunities, but also phone numbers, because not all candidates will necessarily have access to video conferencing. And so we also just want to let all of you know that that message has been portrayed in multiple avenues to our employers. So both through some of our written communication as well as the webinar that we just hosted. So, I think we've gotten a few questions just in general about, reaching out to employers. I think this is just a good reminder that you should definitely ask them some questions, and it's okay to be honest with them, right? We want you to be your authentic self. And, so whether it's saying, I don't have access to a video camera, can we talk by phone? Hopefully they would say yes. And if they don't, then that leaves an opportunity for you to decide, are they the right employer that you would want to work for? And they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. The same thing, we got asked that question about, some different, do we reach out to them if we haven't heard from them, or how do we let them know that, we don't have access to professional clothing because we are in a self-quarantine. Again, I hope that during this unprecedented time, everybody's pretty understanding. We can't just go and sit in a Starbucks with free Wi-Fi right now, right? They're all closed. The employers also understand that. So I think it's okay to just be honest. And if there is a piece of this interview process that is causing a challenge for you, feel free to let them know. I think their response will be really telling to the environment that you would potentially work in. Sorry, Kirby, I will not go off script anymore.
Oh, that was great. I appreciate that addition. Thank you for adding that. So cool. The next thing that we want to talk about in terms of some support and offerings from the TPE Virtual team is our Brown Bag Roundtable discussions. And so we still wanted to be able to engage and build community with our candidates and employers. And so at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time on Thursday and Friday of next week, we will be hosting a room where folks could, if you want to have your lunch with you, sure. If it's breakfast time for you, eat your breakfast. Where we will be hosting discussions based off of some topics that we came up with. So the one that's on Thursday of next week, and for those of you all that may get this reference from a comedian, it's titled Asking All Them Questions. So questions to ask during interviews. And so really wanting to provide you with the opportunity to engage with some other peers and colleagues, and even we'll have some practitioners on the chat as well to just talk about so what are questions that I should consider asking during interviews? What are like at the first round level versus the second round level? What are some things that I should consider as I am learning more and more about an institution? And so really being able to engage in some dialogue about that. And then on Friday, March 27th, we will be hosting a discussion focused on entitled Working While Insert Identity, right? And so we want to acknowledge that while you are thinking about where your next place of employment may be, you do not you do not exist in silos. You are a multifaceted individual, and we want to acknowledge and engage in some real conversations about, so what does it mean to work at a place and be, so I'll say for example, for myself, I identify as a Black, queer, but woman. And so what does it mean for me to work in higher ed at an institution. And so definitely these are things that need to be considered. What does support building look like in establishing community? What is life outside of work? And so really wanting to allow folks to come together to talk about those things. And so really excited about what that time together would look like. The next thing that we are excited to offer as well. So we have the candidate concierge hours, which is more in a group setting, whereas the candidate coaching is individualized time with a seasoned practitioner. And so if you have some questions or you want to process how an interview went or need some advice on something, you would be able to sign up for a 30-minute time slot to have some one-on-one time with our coaches that we have identified. And so these coaches are practitioners who have been in the field for at least 3 to 5 years, and will just give you advice and offer perspective to help you navigate this experience. And so there will be an opportunity to sign up for one of those slots soon, and we plan to offer times throughout the day for folks to do that as well. And then finally, at least from the candidate development side, we are, as Rob said before, getting your hype zone. We're creating some playlists for you all to help you get hyped during this TPE virtual experience. And so we have solicited a number of folks for their anthems, their songs that they used to get ready to in the morning, the song that gets them pumping, if they're knucking and bucking and ready to fight. And so we are looking forward to sharing those playlists with you soon, so that you can have something to bump to while you are going through TPE Virtual. So more to come. All right, so now we wanted to go ahead and open it up to you all for any questions, comments, or concerns that you may have with regards to TPE Virtual or anything that we talked about today. Again, as Kirsten alluded to earlier, we recognize that there's a lot happening within the world and has positioned you to be, have lots of feelings about things that are happening. And so we want to make sure that we can answer any of those questions that may be on your mind.
Great. And Kirby, we'll moderate a couple questions. I just want to get back to one that was asked in the, because we have questions coming in 2 different areas. One that was in the chat, and I apologize if we answered this and I missed it. We had a candidate ask about wearing headphones or not wearing headphones, and is it professional or not? I think it's, I think it's just as professional to wear headphones as to not wear headphones in a video interview. If it's distracting for you to wear them, then maybe don't wear them. What's most important is that you can hear them to hear the questions, and that you can answer them where they can best hear you. So if there's going to be a lot of background noise, you're definitely going to want to put on headphones. If there's potentially not, and you're by yourself and there's not a lot of echo, you may not need the headphones. If you are doing a video interview and have the opportunity to practice in advance, maybe Zoom chat or FaceTime or something with somebody else and ask them where they can hear you more clearly. But you're going to see employers with headphones and without headphones. So I don't think one is more professional than another when it comes to video. Again, the most important thing is they can hear you. Even just like you would with a regular interview, if there is something, you don't want to be uncomfortable in your interview. So, test out your technology beforehand. Don't get brand new headphones that you put on for your very first interview. I know I was talking with Kirby earlier and she's like, oh, I use my AirPods, they're great. I'm like, oh, I could try to figure them out by tonight, but that's probably not the best time for me to use them for the first time is on the webinar with you. I'll do that at a different time, right? The same would go true for an interview. Don't make the first time you test out your AirPods when you're showing up for your first interview.
Yeah. And I would say for me, I use headphones because they help me focus. And so when I'm on a phone interview or things like that, it allows me to kind of zone in to the conversation that's happening and not be distracted by things that are around me. And so using headphones also can not only be helpful for people to hear you and for you to hear them, but then also for you to focus.
Okay, so one of our other questions was, and I know Jacob answered it and gave a good answer, but I think this may be a question a lot of people have, was specifically in terms of how do candidates make decisions to accept or decline a job offer without the opportunity to visit campus. Just to let you know, this was also a question our employers talked about today, is how are they going to do campus visits in a time where we can't have campuses open? And they are worried that as to whether or not candidates will accept job offers if they do not have the opportunity to come to campus. So I can let you know that a couple of things they're planning on doing are things such as partnering with admissions and using virtual tours. Still trying to use Zoom or maybe a Facebook Live to meet with other people. So they are also thinking about that. I just want to put that out there. But panelists, I would love for you to help answer that question as to how do our candidates here, what specifically should they consider and think about in terms of potentially accepting or declining a job offer when they haven't had the chance to visit campus.
Question. I think for me, because I've actually had a couple of those experiences before, I definitely asked questions where I was able to get some of them answered. So for example, when I was looking at some residence life or live-in positions, I know some of the things that at least on most folks' minds is, so what does the apartment look like? And so I would ask questions of, is it possible for you to provide pictures or a video giving a tour of a space? And folks tend to be accommodating in that way. I also know that I make a point to, particularly I think what gives me a good feel of what to consider in a role is, so thinking about what your negotiables and your non-negotiables are, right? And so for me, I know that I have to have access to getting my nails done. I have to have access to someone to do my hair, a barber, things like that, and asking questions or at least connecting with folks, particularly that you could trust. And so for me, I know I also asked to speak with someone who identifies as a Black woman or Black queer individual to ask those questions of, so hey, is it somewhere for me to actually really get my hair done? Talk to me about your experience as a Black queer person on campus and kind of some of the challenges and successes that you had in that. And so don't feel as though you have to just solely make the decision off of the interview itself, but positioning yourself to have contact with other individuals. Again, it'll happen virtually or over the phone. So folks can continue to offer perspective that'll help that decision.
I think Kirby covered a lot of the things that I would also offer, but I would say one of the additional things is once you are interviewing with folks, follow up with some of the people that you may have had the opportunity to connect with. I know it may be a little awkward to connect through the phone or through video, but there may be someone you may have kind of got a little connection with, or someone who said something that had a similar interest of you. I would follow up with that individual to have a conversation with them to kind of ask more around the culture at the institution or more around the positions, to kind of get more of a feel for that position and figure out if it's really a fit by having a conversation with someone you may have kind of made some sort of connection with, or they have said something that piqued your interest in that position, and just follow up with them to kind of continue to question them a little bit around the campus culture, the department culture, and some of those other questions you may have that you wasn't able to fully see because you wasn't on campus to get a full visual. And so employers or employees in different departments are always willing to answer those questions to make sure that you're finding your fit, because they want you to be just as happy as they are about inviting you to join their staff.
And trust, right? There are moments where you can just feel it in your spirit that like, this is probably not it, right? And so take, again, as we talked about before, reflecting, like take the time to unpack kind of where those feelings are coming from. And don't feel as though you have to say yes. Like it's okay to turn down offers. I know there's a lot of excitement that comes with getting a job offer because it's like someone wants me, someone is interested in having me join their team. And you also want to make sure you're making the decision that makes most sense to you.
Great. Thank you, panelists. One of the other questions that we received was, if in the future or now, you will need sponsorship. So this is specifically for our international candidates. How would an international candidate answer without losing the opportunity to continue the interview? I'll give a quick answer and then from my opinion, and also then turn it over to the panelists. You know, as an international student, I think one of the nice things about higher education is across other professions, higher ed is more used to sponsoring international candidates. If we think about how many faculty come from overseas or from across other borders, it is something that is more typical in the HR system already because they are used to having really great and wonderful staff and faculty that are international. I think sometimes people are more nervous about what that process is. So I think this is where you would want to balance it. At what point do you maybe mention it? I usually advise people from kind of a career development background that it may not be something you want to say in the first interview, and you're not disclosing it doesn't mean that you're keeping it from them, right? But interviews are usually more than one process, and so you also want to have that opportunity to continue on, because again, I think oftentimes it's more they don't know what the process is, and so that might just make them apprehensive. And so the further along you are in the process, you don't want to be too far, but if you're making that on-campus stage, that is probably a good time to let them know, and more so also helping to provide them with what that sponsorship process looks like. I hate that impetus falls to you because I wish more of our colleagues knew what that sponsorship process was, but because it always changes, sometimes they're just not sure. And so but again, I think universities are used to it. It's just kind of letting them know and helping them maybe with some of the resources and reminding them that their HR offices should know what that looks like. So then another question, should I tell them I'm an international student during my first interview then if I'm not mentioning the work authorization? You know, I think that's up to you when you answer questions. You know, it's really your personal preference as to, I think it's important to be your authentic self. And so that's also who makes you who as a candidate. And there's lots of employers that see that as a value add to their team. But I also think if you're not sure that it's something you want to talk about, it's up to you as to when you disclose that information. Kirby, Robert, Bailey, Jacob, their thoughts?
Also, like your national origin is a protected class.
Right.
And so if folks are discriminating against you based off of your national origin, race, ethnicity, those other protected classes there, that is against the law. And so, again, that's something for you to consider in terms of like, nope, that's not where I want to be. And so keeping that in mind as well.
Correct. And like I said, seeing, the question about rejections, right? So work authorization, there are some places that is harder, depending on their sponsorship model. But again, oftentimes they just aren't sure how the process goes. And so I would encourage that. That's also a discussion you can then have later in the process with the HR office as well, to even reach out to them. And you don't have to tell them what position, but you could always reach an HR office on that campus and say you're a candidate for one of the jobs, you would be seeking work authorization, and ask them how you should proceed, because that could then be information you're bringing into the interview as well. Great question. Great question. So we just received one about, due to TPE being virtual, many of the employers are emailing a desired interview time and not posting them on your TPE schedule. How do I politely ask them to place it on that schedule as well? I can I feel like I don't want to monopolize the time. Again, I think this is messaging we are also trying to simultaneously tell the employers, but I think doing just that, you know, two things. One, they're the only ones who can place an interview on your schedule, but you can place a time on your, like you can place it on your schedule then. So if you know that City State University has asked you to interview at 10 a.m. Central Time on Thursday, you can always just then block that 10 a.m. and put interview with Central State University, right? If that may be faster anyway than going back and forth, to also make sure that that time gets blocked right away so another university doesn't place it. Because by the time you write back to them to say, great, thanks, can't wait, could you also schedule it, another school may see that you're free at that time and try to interview it. So we're trying to help them. We're working with them to put it on. I know that that is another burden that you may have to bear that they may not be. But I think the fastest and easiest thing is for you to then just kind of block that time out and put the interview on your own schedule.
I would also add too, part of the being able to add blocks of time on your schedule, there's a notes feature in your TPE dashboard as you manage your schedule. And so as we are requesting of employers to put in the interview information, so whether it's a video conference call or via phone, if they are sending you that information via email, copy that information over and write into the notes section. And so as you look at your schedule, you can click on that time block and you can click right into the link or dial the number that you may need to dial. So another helpful tip too, as you manage that.
I would also add on there, hello everybody, my name is Bailey, by the way, I hopped on a little bit late. So I would also add on to that though, I've had a personal experience with doing a virtual search, and I would just add questions like, how will I be contacting you, if they didn't say it by phone or by Zoom or Skype or whatever the platform is. And you could just add on to that then, like, thank you so much for the offer to interview. Will you be adding this to the TPE schedule? I think that's a fair and easy question to ask. Obviously do it in your style, of course, but I don't think anybody is gonna take that offensively or too seriously, as this is like a very unknown time for everybody.
Another question, is it appropriate to tell an employer that you have another interview right after? For example, hi, I just want to be transparent so you're aware, I have another interview at 11 a.m.
Yes, and I'm gonna go back on my platform. If you are able to avoid having back-to-back interviews, please don't have back-to-back interviews. So just make sure to put in a break in there just so you again can go to the bathroom, breathe, reflect, all of those things. And we understand too that just given the nature of everything that's happening, that may not be possible. And so that's a courtesy to the employer, but also to yourself that you have another commitment before or after.
Yeah, absolutely. And employers are usually very receptive to that and very appreciative that you're letting them know in advance, because they also understand that you are searching and you're participating in this virtual experience. So they expect you to have these interviews. So it's not like you're hiding anything, you're helping them also stay on their track, because they also have schedules and they may have back-to-back interviews. So that may be very helpful for them as well, to help them be more cognizant of the time. So as an employer, I always appreciated candidates who were able to say, hey, I have an interview right at 11, or I have an interview right at 10:30, and I would like to be on time for that. That shows me that they respect me as an employer, but they also respect the next employer and want to be on time for them as well.
Ditto.
Any other questions? I see we're about out of time. We are, oh, I see a couple more questions have come in. Would you mind giving a short review of how to make your TPE candidate profile visual to all potential employers?
Sure. Just share my screen and go do it, or what?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, Kirby. If you,
Sure.
if you share your screen.
And maybe while you're doing that, I'll answer the next question just for an interest of time. For a candidate who just registered last week, asking if it's too late for the job search, absolutely not. We have been telling employers that candidates are still registering. In a normal on-site season, employers and candidates register, some even show up on-site to register. So just continue to use the feature as Kirby's going to show you how to make your profile visible, but there's a search feature. Hit the contact employer button and reach out to them to say, hey, I recently signed up to be a TPE candidate. Your job looks really interesting. I'd love the opportunity to talk with you. And just reach out to them. You know, as we mentioned earlier, they will do interviews through TPE, but most of them have had to extend their recruitment season. So they're going to continue to do interviews beyond TPE also.
All right. So once you log into your TPE account, it will take you to your dashboard page here. So you'll see a number of different things here. I'll also echo that we are in the candidate services account. So there's a few extra things that are here that you may not have. But if you go to the edit profile button, you will see something right here at the top that says profile search visibility. And so you want to make sure that you click this, set it to public, and then you will scroll down and click save profile. And then you should now be made public to employers in the database. Yep.
Great. Well, it's 8:30, so I'm going to thank our panelists for joining us. Again, our employer development team has done a fantastic job of getting us to this point. I know they are more sad than anyone that they won't be able to be with you on site. But we will be here virtually, and we will still have a strong presence next week. And we know you're all going to do fantastic as candidates. So we will continue to answer questions via our typical means of email or phone. Feel free to continue. The candidate development team put their email addresses up on this slide as well. We have recorded this and it will be posted, and we will send it out as well as a reference to all candidates that are signed up for TPE Virtual. And we look forward to connecting with you over the next week.
And then before you end, we just have one quick thing that we want to do. And so wanting to end with some closing remarks that will help you get through this time, right? And so just as we said it before, we acknowledge that there's a lot happening in the world. And part of that is actually, one, taking the time to name and acknowledge what those feelings are. Two, we just don't want you to stay stuck there. And so look in the mirror and take the time to say some of these things to yourself while looking in the mirror. So I am worthy without others' approval. I deserve to treat myself kindly. I deserve happiness. My worth is inherent. I don't have to earn it, and we'll get through this. So take some time to do that. Maybe even do it every day. Potentially even think about a personal mantra that you may have, and know that you rock, you are awesome, and we will get through this. So thank you all.